East Hampton Town Board, we are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the March 14th work session of the East Hampton Town Board. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Present.
Present.
Here. Present.
Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This morning, we begin with the public portion where any member of the public may address the board on any topic. We ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. That will be followed by bids presented by Jeannie Carrozza, the 2023 draft capital plan update. This is our, I think, at least our third time going through. I think we have it down today. That'll be presented by our budget director, Rebecca Hanson. Then we have the energy roadmap, and we have with us today Natalie Hanson of GDS Associates and Opt to New York. Then we'll also have a discussion about the Montauk Bluff erosion. We have Andy Gates and Andy Drakes from Land Management with us today to discuss that. There's been erosion at the bluffs. We need to relocate a trail. The draft accessory apartment legislation. And we have Jeremy Samuelson and Eric Shantz will be coming in to walk us through those proposed zoning changes, followed by liaison reports and resolutions. And Carol, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
It's right in front of you.
Thank you. Terry O'Riordan. Welcome, Terry.
Feel so welcome. I'm not going to do any clucking today.
Okay.
Kind of disappointed.
So, you're still going to talk turkey, though, right?
Oh, good one.
There's other jokes there, but it would be inappropriate. On behalf of the sportsmen, my name is Terry O'Riordan. I'm one of the directors and president of the East Hampton Sportsmen's Alliance. And we would like to thank the town board for all your efforts to keep these meetings in place. Wanted to thank all of our ESA members that were here last week in support of us, and some other local people that gave some very passionate speeches in favor of having the spring turkey hunting season. And our organization was able to garner over 300 signatures of people who are actually local residents in support of the season, which you indicated you were going to approve. So I want to thank you for that. We understand completely why you decided to exclude pretty much the Memorial Day weekend area. It's not like we're upstate place. We have a different dynamic here, and we understand that. But we're so glad that you opened up the town lands that were approved for small game for people who want to do spring turkey hunting. So I'm clucking done.
Thank you so much.
I hope I wasn't speaking in a foul way. I didn't ruffle any feathers, did I?
You should fly now while you have a chance.
But we're going to keep pecking away at you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
And Terry, thank you for your participation at Project Most's Empty Bowls.
I'm sorry?
I wanted to thank you personally for your participation at Project Most Empty Bowls this weekend also. Your soup was wonderful.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was the first time I've missed that event. I think since its inception, I wasn't available to attend, and that's kind of a dereliction of duty for me as the soup advisor.
I didn't make anything that had turkey in it.
But you did have the
If I
biggest
did, it
pot.
would have.
You had the biggest pot of
I had-
soup there.
You know why I did that? Because I knew everybody else would have less. And at the end, they would all want mine, whether they liked it or not.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very
Terry.
much.
We have,
We'll see you in a couple days.
okay.
Well,
Joe-
I think there's a misunderstanding that this is going to be voted on Wednesday, on Thursday.
Yes, so the,
Couple days. That's a day after tomorrow, right?
the public hearing, we're having a public hearing because in the code,
Right.
there is a Scribner's error. So that's simply, the public hearing on Thursday is to correct the code, not anything else. In order for us to have a resolution on anything for the turkey season, John, would you just give a timing on that,
Yeah, it
please?
needs to be filed. The local law needs to be filed with the Secretary of State, which takes a couple of weeks usually. Carol, is that correct? Right? So, assuming we have the after hearing Thursday, the board decides to move forward, which I anticipate you will, and there'll be a reso for you to do that.
To correct the error.
Yeah. And then as soon as we get a confirmation that that's filed with the state, then we can move forward.
So the earliest would be Thursday, April 6th would be the earliest we could, if the state turns it around quickly.
Correct.
So the Thursday town board meeting, is it open for public comment too?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Similar to this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every town board meeting is open for public comment at some point during the
I'm
meeting.
so glad that you're transparent,
Thank you.
not shallow.
The public portion happens after the hearings on Thursday instead of before, like in a work
All
session.
right. Very good. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Thank
Terry.
you.
Thank you.
Joe Karpinski. Welcome, Joe.
Morning, thank you. I just wanted to point out that you guys have today under resolutions under Councilwoman Overby, a road widening easement on 81 Bayview Avenue. I'm a little confused how this can be because all the lots that are comprised here would be for parcels 22 and 23, which would be making parcel 23 one giant lot. This is a lot that would comprise of lots 113 through 136. They should have already given up and abandoned Oakwood Avenue to actually build. There's a home and a pool already on these lots that are there. Years prior, in 2017, resolution 2017-920, the town passed 23 and 24, which is actually properties 81 and 89. So therefore, parcel 22 has never given up any road widening easement to the town. And it certainly says that there should be no disbursement prior to the issuance of a building permit, that you need to have this in hand. So therefore, was there ever a road widening easement given? Was there once again a permit given out without all the facts and figures being followed through in town code? That's my bigger question here. So also it says Olympic Heights when we're Hollymere.
Yeah.
So I would just urge you guys that I don't think that you should be voting on that today. And to look into it a lot further, since a lot of the lots there, as I've always stated, need to give up their road widening easement first, and then to get a CO for their property, then we'll need to pave this road. And there are many properties that have built that do have easements and then do things differently. There are homes that have been built on this road that haven't given up any easement to the best of my knowledge and have been said that they've not been needed to by the principal building director or former principal building director. So just something for you guys to look into.
John, can you speak to the issues?
I
that-
can't. I just came over from the engineering office with an approval to move forward with a road widening easement. I don't know more than that, so like, if you want to hold it and I'll
Probably
inquire
table
from
that
them. Yeah.
resolution then.
Yeah, I
It
know
sounds
there
like
was-
there's more to it.
I know
than-
there was an underwriting with it, and to the best of my knowledge,
Right.
they've done 2 easements now.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys are trying to make this into one big mega lot, because that would be combining 81 and 73 together.
No,
So-
wouldn't be doing that.
So
I mean,
That's what's written there, just so you're
All
aware.
right, so
It shows all the lots.
Joe, we'll take
All
a
right.
look at this.
I'll take a
and,
look and we'll hold
right.
off on it until we get some resolve on
And
it.
like I said, to issue a building permit, I mean, they already have a home and a pool. So it's already there. It's already been done. I mean, I was questioning it certainly back in 2018, what was
And there
going
wasn't a
on.
prior that you're aware of?
A prior what, abandonment or
Easement?
easement? No.
No.
No,
Okay.
the only one that's there is that resolution that has for 23 and 24, which just would have been 22 and 23.
Okay,
Because 24 is lot 89, which has another home on it.
all right.
And then the next ones will be going into the wetlands. Also, thank you guys for putting your CPF fund post on the road for the property that you bought at 96. And whoever went and extended the wetland area, I appreciate that as well.
Joe, thanks for bringing this
Thank you.
to our attention.
You're welcome.
We'll
Have a
Thank
take a look
you.
at it. Okay, thank you.
John, could we get a map that goes with this when we talk about it again?
I can get
Goes
you the
with-
survey, or you mean the urban renewal map,
Urban
or?
renewal map.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. thanks.
We'll get a copy of that as well. Okay, anyone else here wish to address the board during public comment? Jason, do we have any callers on the line?
Yes, we do. I will unmute the first caller right now.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, caller ending 8764. You're on the air.
Good morning. I just want to follow up with what Joe just said. The resolution, proposed resolution 391 also caught my attention. There's a whole bunch of erroneous information there. I think what's going on is that one particular owner, Linda Mazzaconi, owns 2 urban renewal parcel lots, both of which apparently have some improvements, one a major improvement and one a minor improvement, and that would be urban renewal parcels 22 and 23. I believe that she owns numbers 81 and 73. Clearly, map 316 is not in Olympic Heights. Unfortunately, this is one of those situations where East Hampton has multiple names for the same road. We have 3 different Bay View avenues in East Hampton, 2 in the unincorporated East Hampton and 1 in Amagansett. So it's really a mishmash. And when a resolution is adopted like this, there should be reference also to the tax map numbers of the property. And in this case, since the road widening easement is a function of the old filed map, there should be reference to the UR map parcel and UR map sheet. So that's obviously, John, this needs to be taken a look at again. The planning board did act on 81 Bayview back in July of 2022. That may have been with respect to road work. This is solely with respect to a road widening easement, which unfortunately historically have not been timely recorded. And this may just be catching up with something that should have been done long ago. Obviously, it can't be done prior to the issuance of a building permit because one or both of these parcels is already improved. The other thing that caught my eye, and I don't know the answer, maybe it's a misprint or maybe there's something more to it, but I don't have a resolution number in front of me. But apparently, Supervisor, you're headed down to Washington, not for a vacation, but to talk to the FAA, which is always fun. But I'm just wondering, I hope you're getting a first-class seat because it seems to be a $5,000 ticket, and then I certainly hope you're not taking a Blade helicopter. So maybe that needs to be clarified, the cost of the travel. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David. The
389.
the trip, I can confirm the ticket paid was about $680 and change. So I don't know that we'll be seeking reimbursement for more than just the airplane ticket and whatever Uber I have to and from the airport in Washington. So I will be traveling, leaving here at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning to drive to Kennedy Airport to take a flight, spend the day meeting with our New York senators about our airport specifically, and then I'll be flying home. Should be here by midnight. Be a fun day.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else on the line, Jason?
I have one caller who keeps on calling and then dropping, calling and then dropping, so I'm having a hard time pinning them down. But aside from that, at this current moment, they are not on the line.
Okay, and that being the case, we'll move on to our agenda items. And the first item up is Jeannie Corrosion with bids. Oh, by the way, my wife just texted me that I need to also seek reimbursement for the parking fees at JFK. Full disclosure.
All right, I have a handful of bids, some notices, and first one would be for the mobile food concessions for select town beaches. The first one is for Maidstone Park. The apparent high bidder for that is Hampton's Soft Ice Cream, also Mr. Softy. For 3 years total, it's $4,860. first year at $1,600. Second, we have Westlake Drive, Peggy's Corp, Sammy Joyce. His 3-year total is $16,500. First year, $5,400. There were no takers for Gin Beach. So we'll try again for that one and we'll see what happens. And all of the other beaches are pretty much, everything's covered. Next is the YMCA HVAC replacement. The apparent low bidder is Premier Mechanical. The total amount is $907,000. Also, we did a couple of RFPs. The first was for the East Hampton Commuter Connection Shuttle. We had one respondent, and that was the Hampton Hopper, who presently does it. Their daily rate is $1,995. That's about a 1.6% of what they're charging now. And those services, if approved, will start April 1st, continuing. And then next is for household hazardous waste collection days, stop days, and it will be a new vendor this time, would be MXI Environmental. We checked all the references and several of the local municipalities do use them, Southold, Southampton, and we did call Southold, and they're also offering a paint care, which we didn't ask for, but it's a service that they use, and what they do is they will take in all of the latex and oil paint, and they'll pay for that disposal. And when I spoke with Southold, they said using this paint care, they said it saved them almost 30% from their prior stop day, and it's a really good environmentally, sound procedure. So it's good, and they're going to give us more education on that as well. And let's see. And then I have some notices. First being Montauk Playhouse HVAC improvements, phase 1. Also licensed to utilize agricultural land in Amagansett. That's the Basso Potter properties. And lastly, food service and kitchenware items for human services. And that's it.
Thank you, Jeannie. Any questions?
I have a question for Jeannie, but I think it would be helpful to get a presentation on the commuter connection. I know we added the spring school to the route. It would be good to see just overall what the numbers are of
Sure.
folks that are using the service.
We can do that. It's a service that's really grown, and especially here in East Hampton, the last mile of service has garnered more participation, I think, than even Southampton. We are at the end of the line, if you will. So that shouldn't be a surprise. And it really is so important to so many now who are commuting to work, and improvements to the LIRR that would allow for better train scheduling is something that I've been lobbying with when I met with the governor last week. That's exactly what I expressed to her, that is a big part of dealing with the housing crisis and the impacts of that on employment. So we can certainly set that up.
Okay, yeah,
for
I can
future.
talk to Joanne, because I know we're in communication all the time with them. We could set something up probably April.
To get Rob done in and
Yep.
and go through
That'd be great.
All right, great.
everybody.
Thank you.
For proposing that, Kathy, I think it would be helpful. So next up, we have the draft capital plan 2023 with Becky Hansen. Becky has the most recent rendition. I think we're
Yes.
at or very close to the finish line now.
I think in my files, this is for round 7, perhaps. Which is
Oh, who's
okay.
keeping track?
Not a problem. So just to bring everyone up to speed from last week's work session, there have been a handful of changes. Most of them were discussed at last week's work session. There is one that came in earlier this morning that I'll also review for the benefit of the public. The most recent one that came in, which is not going going to change the overall cost of the capital plan is in there. There's $250,000 that's appropriated towards beach crossovers in Montauk. We are going to break out of that $19,300 specifically for engineering. We're going to break that out so that we can have it funded by fund balance, and then the engineering funding can be appropriated much more quickly than waiting to issue debt service on the project. But we'll keep, like I said, we won't exceed the 250, so we'll just minus out the 19,300 for the engineering from that overall 250. The other additions that came as a result of last week's work session was a request from the Parks Department for the replacement of the Lions Field Playground shade system, whose cost is $16,000. There's an addition of $25,000 to the Montauk Pickleball project, which was based on a bid that came in last week. The pickleball project was actually part of the 2022 adopted capital plan. It was not in 23. We finally went out to bid on it, and unfortunately, it came back a little higher. So 25,000 has been added, and also the addition of the pickleball to fund the gap from the 2022 amount that was the 22 debt that was issued for that project. I also increased the use of fund balance in each of the funds to $60,000 as a threshold. Any project that is $60,000 or less will be funded by fund balance in each of their respective funds. So adding the new $19,300 from fund balance, which that'll be a fund balance, the total proposed fund balance use in this plan is $1,562,800 over 4 funds. Obviously, the majority of the fund balance will be over $1 million, which will be coming from the A fund. Those are, and again, it doesn't increase the overall project. We are still around $14.1 million, which is about $1 million less than the adopted 2022 capital plan. And again, that is with the caveat that the senior center is not presently included, and that the board will be amending the capital plan at such time when a bid goes back and the board is ready to accept a bid for the project.
So just to add on to what Becky mentioned about the Montauk crossovers that were damaged in a storm, we will look for reimbursement of this through the county, through our agreements also. But based on the timeliness and the need of getting the engineering done, try to get these in place for the summer season or worked on. I appreciate the board discussing this and looking to giving us an option to fund that immediately as far as that engineering aspect. So it's just a minor change with no real budgetary differencing. It just allows us to use fund balance to move it ahead. So thank you, Becky, for talking about that.
So, yeah, I agree with what David just said, and just to make sure that we do get back from Suffolk County the portion that they are supposed to fund for us in those crossovers, because it helps our tourism and it helps our.
It's in the contract. We have a contract with them.
It does. Well, our motels and hotels that will be paying an increased tax, so they really should be allowed.
Good use of that tax.
Yes.
Yeah, they won't be using that tax for that purpose,
They won't
but
be using the tax for
Would be
that
a good
purpose.
use.
but they will be, responsible for paying half of the replenishment and repairs to the emergency stabilization project, as they have every year since.
They have been, and they are all paid up to date through for 2022.
So we will probably have a much larger replenishment necessary this year. We're going to have the LiDAR flyover to assess yardage of sand needed prior to going out to bid, as we do every season. Last year, we got off easy. I think we had about 19,000 cubic yards. I think it's likely to be significantly more, although we never really know. Mother Nature could take the sandbars that have built up offshore and push them right back up. And so we try to wait until most of the storms have passed. We're having a storm right now. Obviously, that will continue to cause erosion. We're going to be talking about erosion in Montauk with the Shadmore Bluffs and having to reroute a trail there a little bit later. But
right. And then the unfortunate thing with last year's project, even though less sand was needed, the cost per cubic yard of that sand increased by, I think it was over a third.
Right.
So that was the unfortunate part of that. But again, having the county as a partner with that obviously does help.
So Becky and I had a conversation last week, because I know what we're looking at here is for any capital project that's under $60,000, we would fund with fund balance. And I had just brought up, there's another way to look at it. Would we consider rather than doing it that way, would we look at funding the projects that have a 5-year PPU, the ones that were, that are short-term, really bonding. Becky pulled last year's resolution when we bonded with the 5-year PPU, and it was like $1.4 million. So it could be that many of the projects that are $60,000 or less are the ones that have the shorter PPU, but I just thought that would be a rationale for
Right.
how to select which projects we use
Sure.
fund balance.
Yeah, I mean, that's another way of looking at it. Usually they are the smaller number projects.
I think one of, I'm
Life-
sorry,
Oh, yeah, I was just going to, for those who don't know, PPUs, the probable
period of
Probable
probable usefulness.
So like vehicles are generally 5 years. I think we roll those.
Well, the largest project, and also remember, we have about 115, well, now 16 projects in this year's plan as opposed to just over 80 in last year's plan. So the largest expenditure in the plan that's not part of the fund balance usage, but which has a 5-year PPU, are the annual vehicle replacements through the police department, which is over $200,000, because he's purchasing more than one vehicle. So those vehicles, that actually their debt resolution actually is part of the 5-year PPU resolution, but it's not included in the fund balance because we do it to, we do the purchase all together. So again, that's $230,000, which isn't included in the fund balance appropriation, but is part of a PPU.
But it was included in the 1.4 million from last year.
Yes, because that, again, it was in the 5-year PPU resolution. So that would just be the largest one that would be the difference between going, solely what's on a 5-year PPU resolution versus just,
Right.
doing fund balance projects.
When do you think we'll have the numbers for how we did in 2022?
Well,
The final.
So the last, at the last meeting, that was the last warrant for any department to pay basically any outstanding 2022 bill that they have. We've been in the process of closing the fiscal year. So we are still slowly doing that. We still have a few things outstanding with some of the departments that we're waiting on as far as accruing it, whether it's a payable or a receivable. So the auditors will start coming in probably in mid-April, May, that we will be done formally ready by June 30th, which is the normal procedure. So,
I think it's helpful just for public information.
yeah, and our first real indication is the town is required to file its annual state report, which it's the AUD or the AFR, whichever you want to call it, the annual update document or the annual financial report. That is due to the state by May 1st, which the annual audit, the numbers don't vary slightly. Again, there's always adjustments because those are just our early numbers, but that is usually our first real indication.
Our preliminary numbers look very good for.
Yes, in the 4 major funds, yes.
Thank you, Becky. Any other questions on the capital plan?
No.
Are we done? I think we got it.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Peggy.
So
Appreciate
I'll put
all
on
your
a
work with
resolution.
us. And, I know there were a couple late submissions, last minute changes, whatnot. Thanks for helping us work through
course.
those. And good to go.
Okay, so I'll put on a resolution to adopt it on Thursday.
Excellent. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. That brings us up to the energy roadmap. And I'm going to let Kate do the introduction here today.
Yes, thank you, Peter.
Liaison.
Natalie, Jason, is Natalie in the waiting?
Yes, Natalie Hansen is joining right now. I
Okay,
know that
great.
for a fact, and I believe that she'll be they'll be presenting. And I have to see if they need anybody else because we also have Rachel Lohr and Josh Duckwall in the waiting room as well.
Okay, Natalie will be presenting.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you need Rachel or Josh?
I don't think so. Probably not.
Okay.
Depends on how hard your questions are going to be.
Okay. No. I was just wondering because they're in the waiting room. That's the only reason.
Yeah. They. I wasn't really sure about the format here, so they did get an invitation to the Zoom, but they're both on the live stream, so that's fine.
Okay, so let me introduce the team here. Natalie Hansen is from Opt2NY, and also the other consultants that are working on this roadmap is GDS Associates. We have always been setting the trend on the East End for action on renewable energies and set goals. Just as a little history, we had a climate action plan. We were the first town to have a climate action plan, which was created 2014 and 2015. That was adopted into the comprehensive plan in 2017. We are also one of the first communities to get the climate smart designation. And now we are looking to create the next step or the next phase in our goal to reach 100% renewable by 2030. So in 2021, the town board at the time engaged the consultants, the team that's working on this update. This is a work in progress. I want to announce that as well. But the team that's working on it is we have volunteers from the Energy Sustainability Committee, including the chair, Paul Muniz and Lena Tambori, and Sam Klein and Kim Shaw from Natural Resources are part of the team. All of the consultants here are part of the team, and I'm on those calls as well. And without further ado, I'll introduce Natalie Hanson to start the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Let me check on my ability to share screen. Looks like I'm good. Okay, so I have a brief presentation to share with you all today. I'm going to give you a bit of an update on our roadmap kind of methodology, and then we'll talk about the survey. The real purpose of this presentation is for the survey, so that's the bulk of the presentation. So as far as the agenda goes, we'll talk about the town's renewable energy goal, and then we've broken out the strategies into a few sections or program areas. Building electrification is one, transportation is another, and then energy policy strategies is the third one that's being presented here today. And then we'll talk about the public survey and our approach there afterward. So this is not news to you all as the town board, but for those listening, this might be more newer information. Current emissions in the town of East Hampton, this is community-wide. So this involves the public to the best of our ability to kind of project that, and then municipal emissions as well. The total annual emissions for the town of East Hampton is 364,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. That probably sounds like Greek to a lot of people. So the equivalent is 903 million miles driven by gas-powered cars, to give you a kind of frame of reference there. That's broken down in not that many categories. So we have building emissions from electricity, which is different from building heating by natural gas or fuel oil or propane. So the donut chart on the right-hand side of this slide breaks it down by category. We're looking at, sometimes you'll see us refer to ICE vehicles. Those are internal combustion engine vehicles or gas cars. So, our traditional car. And then we have vehicle emissions, which are EVs. So that's basically 0%. There are not very many EVs in the town compared to gas cars. And then the building heating, we've broken out by fuel oil, propane, and natural gas. The proportion here may not be exactly correct because it's very, very challenging for us to pull private data on heating fuel methods, but we think that we have a pretty good, at least rough order of magnitude here. So that's the breakdown, and that's the emissions. We're going to talk a little bit now about our projected emissions for the town of East Hampton, because this is what's going to inform our strategies going forward. So as you'll see, present day shows that 364,000 number on the y-axis, but there's a pretty steep decline in the emissions, and that may be interesting to you. The reality here is that the New York grid is expected to be 70% clean by 2030 and 100% clean by 2040, if I'm remembering that correctly. So the largest driver of this decrease in emissions here for business as usual is that cleaning of the New York grid. So the big yellow wedge here that comes down to zero is that. The rest of these remain mostly stable, with the exception of some amount of business as usual expected adoption of electrification, so heat pumps and electrification of homes and buildings. And then we have some modest adoption assumed for electric vehicles, just based on current kind of behavior. So that's what kind of drives this down to a smaller number. So basically what this is saying is, if the town did absolutely nothing on, reducing GHG emissions and just kind of let the wave kind of take the town, we would see a decrease from the 364,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent today down to something like 50,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent by 2040. So that is a pretty good kind of starting point. We do want to note that the goal for the town's 100% clean energy or 100% renewable energy is 2030, which would have us more at the 50% reduction point. So that's just kind of getting you oriented with where we're at today. So let's talk about energy consumption. We've split this a couple of different ways, but on this chart, you'll see a solid black line at the top, which is actual measured energy consumption. So we have this data that we can be very sure about. From 2015 to 2022, it didn't change a whole lot. There was a spike in 2019, but it's come back down to kind of a normal baseline. And then you'll see this dotted line that sort of trends downward. And that is really because we've applied a few assumptions to the town's energy consumption that kind of reflect what we just talked about in slide 5, in the previous slide. So this assumes a modest population growth, which is actually outpaced by the national population growth. We're modeling it after sort of the recent trends in the town. So I think that nationwide, it was like a 3% population growth. And for the town, I think it's closer to 1 or just over 1%. This also assumes cleaning of the grid. So you'll see that the electricity in megawatt hours, sorry, this is not the one that has the cleaning of the grid. The next one is. This one is assuming some amount of adoption of electrification in homes and buildings. So that's why the electricity increases. So the yellow bars slightly increase over time by 2035, and then the fossil fuel consumption slightly decreases. So this chart looks very similar. Don't want to get confused, but this is showing the same amount of consumption, right? So the absolute numbers are the same, but the proportion is slightly different. And this one assumes more renewables are powering the grid than non-renewables, so fossil fuels. But it's the assumptions on total consumption are the same. So it's just showing you a different way to look at those values. Okay, so achieving the renewable energy goals for the town. You all have committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and achieving 100% renewable energy community-wide by 2030. And the purpose of today's presentation and the survey that we're reviewing today is to gather ideas on which strategies the community sees as valuable. So, we're consultants. We can tell you what we think works, but we need community buy-in. And so that's the working group that we've been presenting to on a monthly basis has been extremely valuable in it helping us shape these strategies. But we want another level of input from the community, because a lot of this is going to be driven by members of the public adopting some of these behavioral strategies that can't be forced by the town, for example. So under building electrification, we're looking at a few, these are just, I'm going to provide examples today. I'm not going to get too detailed. I just want to give you something to think about for the next couple of days before the survey goes live. And the survey has more detailed and just more strategies listed to rank. So some examples of building electrification strategies are to promote energy efficient building design and construction, update building codes to increase renewable energy, electrification, and energy efficiency. And then planning, designing, and developing renewable energy projects such as solar for town-owned public facilities. So those are just some examples. And some of those would be driven by the town, some of those would be driven by individuals. It's just kind of across the spectrum. For electric transportation, we are looking at encouraging the adoption of EVs. Some ways that can be encouraged are providing financial incentives or rebates, providing more universal fast charging stations around town. I think we've heard already that there are very limited options for EV charging around the town of East Hampton. And so I think having more access to charging would help to promote adoption of electric vehicles. Another option is converting public transportation to electric options, improving biking and walking pathways. Obviously, that's not electrification. That is maybe even goes in the opposite direction, but it does reduce emissions inherently. And then finally, increasing local public transportation options just to improve the use of mass transit and reducing, per capita emissions. In the energy policy strategy section, this was, as you can probably tell, it's pretty broad. So we're looking at a few examples here today, providing electricity from renewable energy sources. I think that's sort of a given, and this sample or this example option or strategy probably sounds a little too broad and vague, but we drill into it in the survey. And then second is promoting financial incentive programs for renewable energy projects. This would potentially be for business owners or local individuals who want to put solar on their roofs. There are existing programs in place, but potentially further promoting those or expanding them would potentially be valuable. Improving technical assistance to residents to install solar on their homes or businesses. And then finally, promoting financing and funding opportunities for building electrification projects, such as installing heat pumps in homes or businesses. So my understanding is that we will have the public survey opened starting Monday, March 20th, and then it'll be open for about 2 weeks to solicit responses. And then we will synthesize those responses and have them inform our final strategies going forward. And we're happy to present on the findings of that survey afterward if we feel like it's a representative sample and would be valuable to the town board to see the results.
Thank you, Natalie. Questions?
Yeah. Can we go back to just page 6 where the town energy consumption, where we peaked in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned, I apologize, I couldn't catch it all, about the assumptions you made about population. And if you could just walk us through that again slower, please.
Sure. So we found that the national population growth is something like 3%. Don't hold me to these exact numbers. I would have to pull them from our modeling, but based on the town's actual growth or projected growth, it's closer to 1%. It's slower growth than the national average. So that's the population growth assumption. This also does not include the South Fork wind farm project because we're in this chart, we're showing business as usual, and we're not considering the South Fork wind farm project to be business as usual. That's a separate kind of category for us. And so the further assumptions here were that there was a modest amount of, under the business as usual scenario, a modest amount of building electrification that was just happening kind of organically without any town strategies to improve, to kind of increase adoption of heat pumps and other electrification, building electrification strategies. So those are the two main factors to consider here, which is why you see electricity come up a little bit, because their homes would be heating with heat pumps rather than fossil fuels. And then the slight decrease in energy consumption is driven by the kind of slow population growth.
Because I guess, our census data tells us that our population increased from 2010 to 2020 by 32%. So, it would make sense to see that trajectory from, 2016 to 2019 go up, right? And then COVID hit and we were all home and we weren't driving our cars. We were living, we were working from home and staying, close to home. So I don't know if and we know that there's that 32% increase, anecdotally, some feel that may even be a modest number because the census was conducted in April of 2020. And we know a lot of folks came out here during COVID and many stayed, although some did go back to their, to the city or to wherever their primary residence was. So I guess I'm just, the fact that the presumption is that the town's, growth is going to be 1%. I don't know, that could be debatable.
Annually. Yeah. We're open to looking at this closer. We looked long and hard at the population growth projections, but we've considered the census, we've considered more like closer local data, but we can absolutely confirm that this is the way we want to project it, or revise it if needed, given more data input. So that's something that I'll take back to our internal team to consider and kind of just confirm the assumption there.
And I think just to add on to what Kathy said is, we've historically been somewhat of a seasonal community, and the trend may become, especially with remote working possibilities, that our year-round population may shift and that the housing that we have now may be occupied during most of the year. So I'm curious to know, like with the, build out that we have, and, we're nearly, I think something just less than 10% left potential build out. What do the numbers look like if we have year-round habitation based on the number of, housing units we have? I think you have to take a look at that a little bit, because I think there will be a trend to go from houses that are only used seasonally to more and more being used year-round.
Also, we're making a big assumption on, the renewable energy goals of the state, that they will be, happen. And also, I would also suggest we look at the actual timing when they're supposed to come online. I know there's just many that are in the beginning process of the Article 7 process. So I think looking at it may be optimistic, which I always try to be, to look at these renewable energy projections as we're moving forward, because right now our grid is fossil fuel, and that's why for me the South Fork Wind Project was so important, because it broke that trend for the first time of a power plant supplying our energy to renewable energy. That's the first one here in New York State. So hopefully the rest of them will be on target, but that is an assumption. And I always look at the demands we're putting on the grid now. So as we increase and promote electrification, until the grid catches up, we have to take that into consideration in our own roadmaps, for me. But,
And then if we talk about the survey, we got sent the survey this morning. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to spend a lot of time with it. But a couple things. I'm not a big fan of giving out gift cards to incite and send people to do it. I think that just feels a little gimmicky. I mean, we haven't had to do it for the last 3 surveys we did. We did the police reform, the wireless, and then the senior center, and we got robust responses to all 3. So I think that there's a good model there for how we did it. I think we used newspaper ads. I'm hoping that this survey is going to be translated into Spanish, because that's what we've been doing. And while we haven't gotten in those last 3 surveys a great deal of response to our Spanish survey, we did get some. So I think that would be helpful, and it's necessary. So maybe we need 2 QR codes. That's how we did it. I know for the senior center, one for the English language version and one for the Spanish language version. I'd also like to see, when you're collecting demographic information, that there's an age breakout, because I would like to see, I'm hoping that this is going to be forwarded to our students in the high school and our young people. And I'd really like to see if there's a difference in how those, young people, how they prioritize, and how, some of our older community members would prioritize.
Yeah, so it is going to go out through Aubrey Peterson,
Right.
through to the high
He
school.
puts it like on the Google Docs, and he did that for for police reform. And I'm trying to think of, past practice. We've done a press release, we've done
Yes.
flyers, we've done newspaper ads, so I think that.
So there is we have a 1,300, we have MailChimp with 1,300 for energy sustainability. It's going out through all the social media plans. I think the newspaper ad is a good idea. And I was going to also ask all of you to circulate it through all your committees and your CACs. We also have a network of environmentalists that are also on the plan to get it out to their folks as well who live in town.
Right. Which is why the newspaper would be a good balance, because the folks
Yeah.
that are on those lists are already predisposed, right, to maybe protecting and preserving the environment, or they have special interests. The newspaper ad is a broader reach. So I just timing wise, as far as the launch, if you're going to be in the newspaper next Thursday, the ad would be due on Monday. So you may want to hold off on launching until
I think we'll get the launch and maybe just extend the time period.
Yeah.
I'd rather get the launch going on Monday, particularly after this work session, and then do the social media blast, go through the networks, and then put the ad in as the follow-up.
Yeah. And I heard Natalie say that typically what we've done is 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks is really like the maximum.
Yeah, I'd like to see
Yeah, we've built in a buffer too in our schedule that would allow us to extend it a little bit without impacting the project schedule. So we should have time to extend it to, ensure that there's robust response.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Natalie or the team?
No.
That's an exciting project.
Yeah.
I-
I'm interested in this survey. I think.
Yeah, I'm interested in the survey too, and I see one of my favorite, strategies is listed, and that is to improve the biking and walk pathways throughout the town. And that's one way that I think, especially in our community, where it's so nice and beautiful to be outdoors, and the distances are not great between various locations people want to go, that if we can provide safe pathways for bicycles and walkers and joggers, that will, have a lot fewer vehicle trips. I mean, obviously the advantages of that is if you're going to the beach, it's not going to be hard to find a parking space for your bike, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Yeah, there's really no downside to improving that. And, we see it in European countries where the bikes outnumber the cars. I look forward to working on that part as well. I also think that extending for companies out there, universal chargers, fast chargers are the way to go now. I know for our fleets, and we already offer the level 2 chargers, but I'm looking forward to working on some completing that fast charger network to Montauk. I think that would be helpful for EVs as well.
great. So our next discussion is the Montauk Bluff erosion. We have Andy Gates here and Andy Drake from Land Management. We've seen quite a bit of erosion this winter season. I'm sure there's plenty more occurring today and through tomorrow with the nor'easter that we're experiencing. And, that's caused a lot of erosion. We have a beautiful trail through Shadmore Park along the bluff. Absolutely stunning place to walk and view the ocean and the hoodoos and cliffs. And but we've had a lot of erosion there. I remember, I think it was, we had a nor'easter where we lost 15 feet in a single storm. There's quite a bit of loss here. I'll turn it over to you gentlemen to walk us through it.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, so yes, I'm here to talk about bluff erosion at Shadmore State Park Preserve. And
if you could just be closer to the mic, just pull that mic a little closer if you can, speak into it so we can all.
I'll give you a little bit of background about the Shadmore State Park Preserve. This is a property that was acquired as a partnership in preservation by the state of New York, the county parks, and the town of East Hampton. 99 acres was acquired in the year 2000. The property has a nice trail system through it. It has a lot of shrubby vegetation, but it also has 2,400 feet of coastal bluff. And there's a trail that goes along the bluff edge. Because of the constant erosion, that bluff trail has had to be, portions of that have had to be rerouted over the years, and major portions have been relocated in the years 2004, 2008, 2010, and 2018. In addition, the Rhinestein Town Nature Preserve to the east also has had segments relocated over time. And I'm just going to scroll through and show you a few pictures as we go. This was just before the last relocation of that bluff trail. As you can see, it has become dangerously close to the edge, and this portion has since been rerouted.
It looks like a cornice. It's actually undercut, right?
Yeah.
So section can just slough off at any time.
Right. Here's another section where it used to go, and now it just goes straight out into the ocean. And you see remnant pieces of fence posts there, which we chose to leave in fear of actually causing more erosion by taking them out.
And Andy, all of this that you're showing us today, that's recent.
Well,
The last one.
recent is,
Well, then let me ask the question, when did this get photographed?
so this photo was probably a portion from that 2018 reroute. And this one as well was a drone photo from the 2018 reroute.
So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go to this. Back in 2005, the Natural Resources Department made an attempt to do some GPS lines along the bluff edge to get a sense of how much it's eroding over time. But we found that using the GPS has a little bit too many variables. while a GPS unit might have an accuracy to within 3 feet, each year there may be inches of erosion that's occurring. Also, each user of the GPS may have a certain level of comfort walking along the edge of a possibly undermined bluff, which causes users to maybe step back to a safer area. And as you can see in this photo that's up here, these are 2 lines that were recorded during the year of 2005. And there's actually crisscross between them, so much so that you can't really tell which was done first in the year. Making my point that it's not really the best way to determine the rate of erosion. So we do have aerial photos that date back to 1962.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
I took some measurements off of the concrete bunkers that are in the Shavmore Preserve and tried to do an estimate. Of course, these aerials are not as clear as our more recent aerial photographs, but I did some measurements using the concrete bunkers as known fixed points over the last 60-year period, and estimated a bluff loss of 50 feet and 63 feet from each of the 2 bunkers, which over a 60-year period, that averaged out to just under a foot per year of bluff loss. It's 0.94 feet per year.
Right, and that's just the average. I know that
That's an average.
we have those events every once in a while where we had, and I think it was 2018, where we lost 15 feet in one shot in long portions of the trail.
Of course, the bluff loss is never uniform across the whole property, so you do see things like that occur. Going forward, I decided to put some stakes in at various locations across the bluff where we can take measures and use those as fixed points going forward. So these are the locations of 6 stakes that were put in place, GPSed, and a measurement can be taken off of each of those stakes. These are all within 35 feet of the bluff edge, because the concrete bunkers are over 300 feet away. So we can't realistically use those to measure off of in the field. So these stakes are put in, and I can go back each year or a couple times a year and take measurements off of them right to the edge of the bluff, to the what we call the nearest point of sloughing, where the bluff is losing soil. This is an example of the monitoring form. So I started this last year in March. So I've done 3 measurements at these 6 points. And as I stated before, of course, bluff erosion is not uniform. So some lost less than others. In this example here, it started out at 25 feet, and after 1 year, it's at 24.2 feet for a total loss of 0.8 feet. But then there's another one here that has lost, in the same time period, has lost 3.3 feet. I'll show you a couple other pictures of the loss. Going forward, we'll be able to have a better rate of the bluff loss over time. But after my first year of observations, across these 6 locations, it did average out to 0.88 feet for the year, which was surprisingly close to my aerial measurement over the 60-year period of 0.94 feet per year. This is another example of where our bluff trail used to go. And you can see a piece of the split rail fence hanging off the edge. That portion has been rerouted as well. And I just have a couple other pictures to show from the beach. Here's another example of a big chunk falling off. So this is just a general report giving you an idea of what we're working on. I did mention the Rhinestein Nature Preserve, which is town property. immediately adjacent to the east of this property, which Andy's going to discuss more of because we have a current situation there where the bluff trail has become dangerously close to the edge.
All right. Hello. So I'm the other Andy Drake here from the same department, land management. Okay, so I can share this. How do I do that here? Okay. There's, okay. Where? Right there. All right, so I have a couple other photos to share as well as an aerial map showing a necessary reroute that we're seeking approval to put into place in the field at Rhinestein Nature Preserve Park that's adjacent to Shadmore Park Preserve and also adjacent to Ditch Plains Beach. These trails are most closely accessible from Ditch Plains parking lot. We have two accesses from there, and they do traverse the path of the bluffs, such as Shadmore. You know, I'm going to go to. I'm going to go to the. Oh. All right. Okay. All right. Well, so all right. So I have two photos here, and just like the photos that Andy showed, it's the same situation. If you see up towards the top of the photo, you can see the bluff has just caved out, and the trail goes right off the edge here. We implemented we cut in a pretty primitive reroute right now just to direct people away from this bluff edge currently, but it just puts us up to the top of the hill. What we're seeking approval for is putting in and installing a newly rerouted trail around the hill altogether. It would go through a wetlands area. And do you know why I can't open up this map here? All I have access to is these photos. Yeah, it's the same file. Cool. I want to show the aerial map that actually shows the route, and I'm having a hard time.
We have in the handout, but it would be helpful if you could display it for the public to view.
It's right here. Okay, boom. Yes. All right. So you can see the Ditch Plains parking lot up in here in the top, the northeast corner, and you see the orange trails. These are all existing, the thinner orange trails along the bluff. This darker yellow trail is what Andy and I cut in. That was February 27th. We cut that in just to avoid that bluff edge that has fallen off. And the darker pink line and longer pink line is what we're seeking approval to install. Ideally before the busy season. There is a significant area of erosion here near this number 2. That is, there's a handrail and section of trail that goes right along the bluff edge now, up and over this hill. And I think the best course of action would be to just bypass around it to the north side. That would put us in this wetland area here as well, near the number 2. It would require approximately 80 to 100 feet of board walking, and the entire length of the reroute would be approximately 675 feet. You would lose the view off the top of the hill momentarily, but I mean, just a little bit further down to the east and a little further down to the west, you get the great views. So it would bypass a high point where a house used to be, but I think it's beneficial. It would last a significant amount of time, you know, to avoid these erosions and constant reroutes, and put us in a good place for some time. So this was the photo point at point number 1, and over here this is the area with the hand railing up and over the hill I mentioned before.
Wow.
So to get around, we could go through this wet area with board walking and then around closer towards this house, but it would still, the trail would still be approximately 25 feet from the property line over there. So we do have room to work with.
And how much board walking did you say would be needed?
Approximately 80 to 100 feet. And what we typically do is, construct pretty simple boardwalking with two 2x12 side by side over 4x4 is just elevating the ground a little bit. And I don't think it would require too much more than that. We don't need to stake into the ground or anything here. So, but yeah, with your approval, we'll get started on this. And
So it looks like point number 2 on the map is right there where the wetland reaches the edge of the bluff.
yes, and you can see the significant erosion right here at the
Yeah.
bottom of the
Right.
screen.
And I'm just wondering, once that
That's
little
gonna
section drops off, will that wetland just tend to drain out? And I mean, I know there are also some various points along in Montauk, maybe not necessarily Shadmore, where there's perch water. There's also, coastal ponds that are on the edge. And so once it gets to the point where that pond opens up, you get a nice waterfall. And
Yeah, this area of darker soil here is saturated from this wetland now.
seeping now.
Yeah, it is draining out right through this area right now, and I think it's been the cause of this this main area.
So when I look at the aerial, the trail is, been rerouted over time. It gets closer and closer to where the private property lines are. I'm
Yes.
just curious, like, what is the closest point? And, just try and get an idea how many more years we're going to get out of a public trail that makes it all the way along the bluff and before you have to go down on the beach to complete the walk. It's probably not that far in the future.
No,
In some
A year.
places.
it's all relative, right?
Could
But
be, could be in one storm, I suppose, one really major storm, or
at 0.9 feet per year, I mean,
Mhm.
we could
that's
get
the average.
another 150 years.
Yeah, it's really getting there.
I mean, not sure about the exact measurement there, but yes, it's cutting in pretty quickly. So
Well, obviously we have to reroute the trail due to the precarious nature of it. Where it's currently located. Board members have any comments or concerns about the proposed rerouting?
So I've discussed this with two of my committees. First of all, 2 weeks ago, we discussed this at the Montauk Citizens Advisory Committee. There are individuals on that committee that live in this section of Seaview, not Seaview,
Sir?
Surfside.
yeah, whatever the street is there, and I apologize, I'm forgetting it, Miller Ave
Mhm.
up there. They're supportive of it, then too, they understand, they see the slumping, they see the evulsive action on it. Then too, they understood the reroute last time, there were no concerns, they were thankful because they were gonna have to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Because this is a very enjoyable hike, as you might know.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most well-used properties in town, public lands.
We also did discuss this and the Shadmore at the Nature Preserve Committee this past week also, among other things. They were supportive of it. And mostly that they were very supportive of the initiative that both our land stewards have shown the town and the residents by taking these initiatives to actually track coastal erosion, evulsion on some of our public lands by doing through fixed marks. And too, so they were very thankful for that. And I think it shows the strength of the land management department for the town of East Hampton also. Lastly, I want to thank both the land stewards and Scott Wilson and his department. Last year, there were concerns that, I don't know if you caught what Andy Drake said, there was a house there. So there was legacy piping to try and probably get some of the water away. That a lot of the piping and concrete, because of the erosion, had fallen onto the public beachheads down there. And they took action in removing a lot of piping and metal shards that could be dangerous to children, families playing, and adults even, and to remove that as it goes out, as it happened. I look forward to you continuing that. So long way of saying I do support this reroute in the way you're prescribing it.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, just agreement.
All right.
All
right, thank you.
Support this. Jeremy, you have a comment you'd like to make?
So, sorry, impromptu, but sitting through this good conversation, I just wanted to share a comment and observation. I share kudos for our colleagues in land management. I think this is great work. I think further to that, talking about this at the town board level is critically important. There's however many viewers out there now that are watching you all go through this process. I would urge you, if it isn't already part of your thought process, to consider actually making this a more public discussion in the form of signage at the trailhead. So there's an opportunity here to get people to understand the fundamental concepts that are in play, and then talk about what the appropriate responses are, meaning retreat. In a prior professional incarnation, we would take people out to settings exactly like this and encourage them to think through what the challenges are, and then what some of the opportunities for our response are, and then actually use that as a starting place for a conversation about some of the harder things that we have to do in town, like moving critical infrastructure. So people very quickly understand and latch on to these ideas when we're talking about a trail. They say, yeah, move it, right? But then when you start talking about people's lives and investments and commitments of property and all of those much more difficult and more valuable decisions, this gives us an entryway into that conversation. So I just wanted to share
There's
that.
an opportunity here. I'm glad you're pointing it out. I'm not surprised to hear that from a planner or a planning or our planning director. Yeah, so that's certainly something that we can look at, and maybe having a small kiosk that talks about coastal erosion and maybe demonstrates it here as part of the walk that people can look at, but can also highlight some other areas in town and some of the challenges that we're going to face and are facing regarding coastal erosion.
So thank you for letting me jump in.
Absolutely. I love the idea of that as well. We have a large trailhead kiosk at the Shadmore Park currently, and we're discussing adding a secondary kiosk at the Rhinestein trailhead also. So in all those, in most of our trailhead kiosks, we have the trails map, and then we have a sidebar with with information that we feel necessary to share
And
with the
certainly
public.
we can condense some of that by adding a QR code.
Yeah, no, we have QR codes on there as
You
well,
beat
but-
him to it,
I
didn't you?
did. I did. So I saw the opportunity.
thinking.
Yes.
And easy for me to say, hey, folks, can the other department please do this? Great idea. So, apologies for that part of it.
Well, Jeremy, now you've opened yourself up, and I think you can help provide some content.
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't hear. Yes, sir. We're absolutely happy.
I'll send you an email.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So, Andy, do any of the signs or that we're even considering tell people not to wander off of the trails because of the damage they could do?
We do say we do recommend and suggest to stay on the marked trails.
I think with the
but
tick
not
population,
for that purpose.
It's
the ticks.
Actually, do we have we have signs all along the bluff that say bluff erosion, keep back, danger. That's all marked in the field on the trails, and I believe we also have that written up on the language on the Shadmore map as well.
Okay.
But when considering this new map, absolutely will be.
Yeah.
Avoid ticks, stay on trail.
That is exact wordage on our trails maps. Yes.
Yeah, that'll keep people.
There you
on.
go.
help.
That'll
That'll
give
It's some
help.
motivation because they're out
The
there
garden
even
ticks
in
out
March
there
and February.
protecting the wildlands. Any other
Well, wait a
questions?
minute.
Do we do signage, Andy, in English and Spanish when we're at the?
I don't think we have signage in.
We may want to
Spanish
on the
language.
most popular trails,
Mhm.
consider doing in Spanish language as well.
Okay. Yeah, we should consider that. Okay, great. All right,
Anything else?
Sounds good.
We'll move
All right.
on then.
we'll begin the process.
Thank
Draft-
you.
draft
Thank both of you. Thank you, Andy. And Andy.
Yeah, Andy and Andy.
So the last item on our agenda is the draft accessory apartment legislation. We've had a number of reviews of these proposed changes. And at our last work session, I think we pretty much agreed on moving forward. We were just going to have a brief review of those most recent changes. And then I think we'll be ready to schedule a public hearing. Jeremy?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
And Sen again is our planning director.
So I'm before you today exactly as the supervisor described, with the goal of trying to get us to a notice of public hearing as soon as this Thursday. And that would set us up to potentially have a public hearing as soon as April 6th. That's if you all sign off on this final set of 3 changes that came out of our most recent conversation. I will now walk you through them. Do you all have copies of the material?
we do.
Okay. So if you skip to page 8, You'll notice a section in green there. This is the issue that was flagged by Councilmember Lease last week, where we wanted to actually make sure that in the limited business overlay zoning districts, or where that zoning touches down, that we gave a more inclusive set of opportunities for apartments to be created. Under the existing legislation as it stands today, they can exist, meaning these apartments can exist on a first or second story. They could not exist in a basement, and you all discussed actually removing that prohibition on basement, with an understanding that, of course, all services for safe and convenient habitation that meet New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code and Sanitary Code would be met. So that is a change that is reflected here, and it comes about by simply just striking the reference to prohibition and basement. That's the first change that's different from last week. The next change appears on the next page, page 9. And these specific changes are really now we're looking at the accessory affordable apartments piece. We're backing out of the conversation around limited business overlay, and we're over to the piece of legislation, or the part of the legislation that deals specifically with residentially zoned properties, and trying to add a unit to that of an accessory affordable apartment. And the change that is requested here really is, again, massaging existing code to make sure that we have a very clear and the right list of additional uses that can occur on a property in conjunction with a primary residence and an affordable accessory apartment. So namely, we have struck any reference to also being able on that property to do anything that is described in the code as a rooming house or to take in boarders. We are also noting that actually it is appropriate for somebody to have a home occupation or home professional office. So, think of somebody who is an engineer working remotely, or a therapist who's seeing clients, whatever the right set of combination of uses is there. We're also noting through this conversation that a detached affordable accessory apartment shall not be permitted on a lot for which there already exists an artist studio or a pre-existing accessory apartment, two-family detached dwelling, or multiple family dwelling. So we're really trying to create a very distinct box that these are allowed to operate in. The next clause there was some discussion last week, that was talking about an affordable apartment may not be sublet. And we had a sort of free-ranging conversation about any additional constraints that may or may not be appropriate there. And the board asked us to come back with simply the language that an affordable apartment may not be sublet. The implication of that is that if somebody in the primary residence, the property owner, wanted to rent for up to 2 weeks, as they're allowed under the code, or for a longer period of time, say for the season, that they would in fact be able to do that. So that's a summary of the changes there. The last change that I have for you actually isn't a change. So apologies, I'll rephrase that. The last question that I have for you that I would ask you all to make part of your conversation today is, after we met last Tuesday, the business committee, of which Councilmember Overby is the liaison, met as our regularly monthly meeting. They have been highly supportive of this legislation in general. No surprise, the business community in general is interested in trying to make sure that while we're also solving this problem for year-round, we're also having an eye towards trying to provide some relief for workforce housing, which in this case we mean to be that it could be occupied on less than a year-round basis, one of these affordable apartments. So their request for you all to discuss was that they fully support the changes that you have recommended here, including that of the 20 units that would be added to each school district here, you all have described that 5 of those, or up to 5 of those, in each school district may be available for less than year-round occupancy. They wholly support that, meaning the business community wholly supports that. Their interest over time is to see that if there is a demonstrated need for that number of 5 to go up, that it is as straightforward a process as is possible to do it. And so their request is that you all consider making that aspect of this legislation able to be changed via resolution rather than through the changing of code. So those are the 4 items that are before you today. Apologies for just sort of rolling them all together there. I'm happy to.
Jeremy, did they say up to 10? Like that the town board by resolution could from time to time change from 5 seasonal up to 10 seasonal is what I had in my notes, but.
And so I did not note that same, point, but I.
It's in the discussion.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Do we want to discuss that point first?
Sure. It's on the table, right? It's flopping around here. So.
Well, I think personally, I think any resolution that would be moving forward, the town board would discuss it. And I don't necessarily say why we'd have to stop it at 10. I mean, is that a safeguard to come back to?
It was
change-
just
code change?
mentioned, in other words, doubling that number. I mean, you could go higher if you wanted to, or you could just leave it as Jeremy presented it as open-ended.
Or it's like, just do it instead of having that last line, just do it by town board resolution. That's what they want to do, right? They don't want us to give a number.
Well, I think they're fine with the number here and are
Okay.
supportive of the
Total
5.
cap number.
Okay.
Supportive of 5.
But if we want to change it in
But
the
if you need
future.
to adjust it, and again,
Okay.
adjusting it by resolution versus having public hearing.
To change the actual code.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Saying it might be more time
You could
consuming.
leave that provision, you could write that provision so we could adjust it by resolution, or you could
Correct.
just deal with it by, changing the code as we're doing now by
With
having a
public
discussion and a public hearing.
Yeah.
It's a little more cumbersome. Requires a little more it requires direct public input as opposed to a resolution, which may or may not be picked up by the public.
Correct.
I think one of the concerns is that the business committee has become, through both this process and through the outdoor dining legislation process, has become keenly aware of the many steps involved in changing code as opposed to resolution, including the reporting requirement to Albany and the turnaround time to get that legislation back. And one of the observations that was shared with me is that takes us from a more nimble position to a less nimble position.
I personally don't have a problem with it. We have an overall cap anyway.
Mhm.
I would agree.
We're
yeah.
going to have a public discussion if we choose, but to do this by resolution either, I would say so.
So now
not a
is,
major
do you
code
want it
change.
open-ended, or do you want to say by this piece of legislation that there is a guardrail of up to 10 out of the 40?
I personally don't need the guardrail, and I would
Okay.
be comfortable doing it by town board resolution, designating the number. Even designating the number, I don't even know if you need 5 units in the code, that it could all be done by resolution.
For
To pick up,
seasonal, the number for seasonal,
Because if
but we
you,
have
if you,
we should have a starting point. though.
I agree.
yeah, but the starting point could be in the resolution.
You'd have to do an additional resolution.
Right.
But you could state it in the legislation and say it could be amended by resolution. Or I guess to your point, yeah, it makes more sense not to put a number in.
Yeah.
and just Do a resolution.
Because otherwise it's confusing, because
I think you're right.
if it says that it's done by resolution, then I have to go look at the final
Right. And if
resolution,
you put a number in here, then people may not
realize
understand
that
there's
it's
a
been
resolution.
amended.
agree. People okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's the way to go.
Is there any other item that we need to?
Yeah, I just said a couple things. Some of it is just, starts on page 1 where we've got the chart for family size and dwelling unit size. I think this chart is oversimplified because Jeremy, we know from our discussions in our Route 114 working group that, a family size of 2 is not necessarily a 1-bedroom. If it's a parent and a child, and the child is over 3, at least by East Hampton Housing Authority standards. I don't know where the town comes out on this, but that's 2 bedrooms. And if you're parents with 2 kids, it's 2 bedrooms if the kids are the same sex. It's 3 bedrooms if they're, if you have a boy and a girl. So I just want to put it out there that I think that this chart is oversimplified.
Well, for the housing authority, that's a different
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm not sure the
thing,
housing
and I don't know
authority
that we
and
want to
or
apply their standards.
or anything else would
Right.
agree with that. So I don't know. Now, before we get too deep into it,
So
our main concern was the affordable accessory. We're going back then and changing something else here.
Mhm.
And we had thought, I think in our last discussion, that we we know there may be a couple of things that need to be adjusted that don't include the actual 255-1163 that are in, so we may go back and do that, but because time was of the essence, we thought we needed to get this.
Right.
So, I mean, if there are too many changes, then we probably need another work session.
Well,
So that's what I'm concerned about.
if I could though, on page 6 at the very bottom, lowercase c, where it says this is for inner commercial apartments within commercial structures, where it says that an apartment is made available for year-round rental, but may also be available for seasonal rental to employees of the business operating within the same commercial structure. I don't know if you could put a period after seasonal rental period. If I own a commercial structure and all my employees have housing, but there's another company or somebody I do business with whose employees do need a seasonal house, apartment. Why limit it that you can only have, you have to be employed by the company that's operating out of that structure? Why not make it available as an affordable apartment to anyone? So that was just one question. And then on the following page, on page 7, G, each apartment shall have a maximum of 2 bedrooms with a maximum of 2 beds and 2 occupants per bedroom. That language is used here. The similar language is used for LBO, but they drop with the maximum of 2 beds and 2 occupants per bedroom. It's not consistent. I don't know, do we want to be consistent? And again, now we're in the LBO.
Just before you move off
Yeah.
of that one, where is the additional section that you're drawing the correlation to from G? Where does it appear under LBO? So that
Page 9.
page 9. Okay.
Small letter G at the top of the page. See how it has each apartment shall have a maximum of 2 bedrooms.
I see that on page 7.
And then it's on the top of page 9. Maybe I have a.
Got it.
Oh, and then it says and.
Yep. Okay, I just wanted to tie the two together.
Yeah,
That's helpful.
so
Thank you.
that's not consistent there. And then again, on page 8, again, this is, if you've got a small letter C, it's the same thing, that you can only rent out seasonally to employees of the business operating within the same commercial structure. Again, it's limiting.
So same fix, put a period after seasonal
I
rental
would,
and, yeah.
if I'm in an LBO and I own a flower shop and I've got an apartment above, but nobody that works in my flower shop needs an apartment, but the restaurant that I provide flowers to has a chef that needs an apartment, why shouldn't I be able to rent that out on either year-round or seasonal basis to someone? Because this is, again, to me, it's limiting. And I think that's all I had.
So the board okay with making those adjustments?
So I heard three things, and if I may, I'd like to make sure that I got them. I'm going to set aside the first piece for just a moment on the chart. The two bits about ending a sentence after seasonal rental and your example of the flower shop, we can make those two changes with the board's support here today. We can very easily strike through the balance of that sentence. Am I free to do that? Any objection?
Board,
No,
agree
no
with that?
objection here.
No.
I support it.
So I would ask John if he even remembers when we originally did this legislation. Now, we were on the planning board when this went through.
It's a long time ago now.
I don't, yeah, it was a long time ago. I'm trying to recall whether or not if you are the owner of the business and you rent and you have your employees, you're not really within the program because you don't, so now you've got to make sure that whoever the owner is of the business and is renting to another person from another business becomes part of the affordable housing program. Mm-hmm. Okay, there is some paperwork involved in all that, I believe.
Right.
If I recall having, working with this when we were looking at it.
They have to qualify as it has to qualify as an affordable rental, right?
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So we're good with that one.
And then
So that was in two places, right?
Page 9, page
Yep.
7.
Yep. And then the next change I have is to make sure that we have consistency between the two clauses that both happen to be labeled G.
Right.
Yeah.
To make sure that we have consistent language there.
It looks like it was dropped.
Yeah, it does.
Because the and is there.
And.
Right.
Yeah.
And nothing.
Right. Exactly. I can relate to that.
And then I had one more thing.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that if the second one reads like the first one, you all are fine with that?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay,
And
yes.
then page 12, A1. So where we're talking about this exception shall be limited to up to 4 affordable accessory apartments within residents within each school district.
This exception.
I'm sorry,
Correct. So this has been, and I'm glad you're honing in on this. So there has been much discussion as we've worked through this about what if the owner of the property, to use a phrase I've used with you all in the past, wants to live in the small thing rather than the big thing, right? And we've gotten ourselves to a place of comfort, I think, with not only that concept, but ways to facilitate and remove barriers to entry for that. The sole governor that remains in place, in other words, that keeps 100% of these from being done that way, is exactly what Councilmember Burke Gonzalez just pointed to, this limitation of this exception shall be limited to up to 4 affordable accessory apartments within residences within each school district, et cetera. So I believe the question that you're asking us to think about is, do we want to limit it?
I went back and looked at our discussion from February 7th, and my notes had, since we doubled from 20 to 40 per school district, we talked about doubling the 4 to 8, or we also talked about striking it all together and not putting a cap. So I wasn't clear where we netted out.
Well, we haven't proposed any change here, so
we're comfortable with 4.
Or you all tell us where you'd like to land.
Because I think this also goes back to what we just discussed earlier then too. If we're successful here, I'd rather do it through resolution then too. I mean, are we looking to cap this? It doesn't necessarily sound like a bad thing to me.
I will share with you all that where we have seen this be actually put into effect is really 2 very specific examples. One is for somebody who is looking to age in place, And the second one is for a longtime property owner welcoming basically their kids who now have kids back home. And in that case, it makes sense for the bigger group to take the large space and the individual or couple to take the smaller space. Those are really the two examples where we've seen this so far.
Yeah, we spoke about this last time, and I thought we came back where we did need a cap because it doesn't change the character of the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
I'm trying to
Increase
understand why
density.
would we hold this situation out different from the others? I don't know that we should or would, right?
Agreed. I think we go back to what we just
I
talked about
just
earlier.
have one
We have
question.
a cap of 40.
I have one question on this. If
Very
this,
many, there are several different iterations that could appear, so.
so what we're trying to do is to promote housing affordability through this program. If I build an affordable apartment, registered, rent limited, and I then move into that apartment, I'm not charging myself rent. And now what I've created is a place for me to be able to to sell my primary residence at market rate.
No, ma'am. No,
Okay.
incorrect.
Your primary
Okay.
residence has to be at the
Affordable rate.
affordable.
Okay, so I really think that's the guardrail right there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
And just there's an additional piece in place, which is somebody who wanted to do as you just described would actually have to disclose that and technically receive permission through the permit that they receive to have any affordable accessory apartment. You would need to say, and by the way, the intent here would be for me as the property owner to live in the small thing, and then therefore the big unit becomes the affordable component that I'm getting a permit for.
So for me, that's the guardrail. I don't necessarily see another guardrail limiting number needed.
I don't think so either. I agree with that. I would strike that limit of 4.
And I agree with that. And I think what can't be missed is what Jeremy said about aging in place. A lot of people think, as we've all discussed, there's a difference between affordable housing and affordability. There's also individuals that might think that affordable housing is only for young workforce. Affordable housing is also for senior housing, aging in place. This gives an option to be able to do so in your hometown or the place that you enjoy. And so affordable housing has very many different contexts too. And this is one of them directly that could be seen a lot more. So I agree. I wouldn't do it through resolution.
So we agree, we'll strike that last sentence?
Yes.
Okay, so the big question here for me is we've made a couple of changes. I love you all. I will always come back and talk to you. Do you want me to come back and talk to you about this?
We'll get it scheduled for public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think what you should do is send those changes immediately to us. I don't think it'll take too much time. Just circulate it
Put it
via
in a
email.
blue this time.
Yeah, they're not substantive.
Is that
Make a new
is that
color.
your preference?
I almost changed the color on you and I thought, no, stop.
Make a new color and,
All right. So what I would propose then is I'll go back this afternoon and make these changes. I'll send them to John for hopefully a quick read to make sure I didn't make a mess of some of the legal part of this. And with his blessing, we'll circulate it to all of you, hopefully by end of business today.
And then, we'll have the draft legislation scheduled to be a resolution to hold a public hearing Thursday.
Yes, but John, how soon will we need to draft the language for the actual resolution that allows various limits or the one limit to be changed via resolution?
I need to have it by tomorrow morning.
Okay, so I can give you draft language on that, but you're going to have to do the legalese.
Yeah, I'll put it into the.
Okay.
But we would only need that resolution after this public hearing was heard and it was adopted. If not, we stay with what the code is.
Right.
So we don't need a resolution for that until after the public hearing
Yeah.
is adopted. So that's secondary.
We need a resolution. Well,
You need a resolution to notice the hearing,
you change
which
it
is going to be
here
different
or
from
by
the draft you're getting
resolution.
from Jeremy.
But we're not changing the code yet. We have to have the public hearing, adopt the.
Change it.
We have to
haven't done it.
propose to change the code, though. You have to tell the people what you're going to change it to. So what he gives you is not what your hearing notice is going to be, because if we print that in the paper, it's going to cost you a fortune. So what we usually do is refer to that text, which is the full text of the chapter with the changes. And then I just note the specific changes in the local law itself, but then I refer people back to the website to see the full context so they can see
Sure,
how it
okay,
all
that-
fits.
I
you know.
understand your point.
So that's why we just need to, but if he gets that sometime today. It's not a problem getting it done.
Well, we'll need it today because we need them notice.
Because I got to get to Carol, the
by
day
11
before.
o'clock tomorrow.
So tomorrow's
Yeah, notice
Wednesday, right?
11 tomorrow.
That works.
Earlier than
That should work.
10 tomorrow.
6 o'clock tonight. Next meeting is not a late one, right? Yeah, so it has to be in the morning. It's fine. You
Now,
can definitely get it done.
All right.
Now,
We're all set.
how do we switching the primary dwelling with the ADU? We have to think of how that plays in and can't play into a seasonal.
So
Can't
that's
vacate and rent the house for the season. That's the whole idea here, right?
well, any rental has to be on an affordable basis. Whatever unit you're renting has to be on an
So if you
affordable
choose
basis.
to make that move, the other one's going on an affordable.
Right. And if you're doing it on a less than year-round basis, then you have to do it as with the permission of your permit.
Right.
You have to apply for that and be awarded. So
Just wondering if we need to make that clear somewhere in the code.
this
the only thing
is
I wanna
why
look
I
at.
bring you the words and you.
I just want to look at that because
Yeah,
I don't want people to think, hey, this is a great idea. I'll just move into the apartment in summertime and rent the house out.
Right, you
Right.
can't do that.
Right.
Right.
Get that ADU paid for all of it.
Right.
Yeah, because now you've wiped out an affordable.
Right. Because then you're right. You're actually taking the unit away.
Yeah.
It would be available to.
Well, so two things that happen in the code as it exists and as it would under any amendments here. The first one is that you have to describe which unit is which,
Mhm.
and you have to say who is going to live in that unit
Right.
and for what period of
And
time.
if you're going to change your mind, you've got to come back and amend your permit.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you'd be in violation of the permit.
Okay.
All right.
I think that works.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jeremy.
Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Stick around for the liaison report, if you would. Jeremy,
Jerry?
just stick around for the liaison reports, if you would. I want to bring up the governor's housing plan, and I may ask you to opine as well, chime in. So as I said, that brings us up to liaison reports. Kathy, you have a report for us?
I do. I'm going to start with Human Services, our Wellness 60 Plus. I've mentioned that we've been adding new instructors. One of the new programs we're adding is Balance and Self-Defense with Oscar Giles. And Oscar is a high-ranking black belt and a former instructor. And he has tournament experience for 15 years in the International Martial Arts Federation. And he's going to help folks with self-esteem, physical conditioning, flexibility, strengthening, and stamina. That we've got so many new instructors that Diane Patrizio, our Director of Human Services, is planning to be here next Tuesday to give a presentation so we can all, she's doing a presentation where we can meet all of the Wellness 60 Plus instructors and let folks know all the programming that's taking place because it's extensive. Switching gears now to the new senior center. We had a presentation last Thursday. Planning was involved, myself and the folks at Human Services with R2, our architectural firm, and they're making tremendous progress on the site plan, the landscape zones, including walking paths, and the indoor floor plan. And they are tentatively want to be here in person at the April 4th work session so that they can present that. Diane asked me to bring up that the New York State Office of the Aging has an ask for us, and we rarely hear from, get asks from, the New York State Office of the Aging. And they're putting together their first ever comprehensive survey of older adults. The survey results are going to inform state priorities as the state prepares their 4-year plan to the federal government. And this document guides service delivery and funding and whatnot for, service programs that we get and that we utilize here. It's also going to be used to inform a master plan for aging. And this is something that Governor Kathy Hochul has called for to make sure that older adults and individuals, live healthy and fulfilling lives and they age with dignity and independence. So I'm hoping that we can put this out on the social media and send it out to our groups. It's targeted for adults 50 plus. The next thing up is the East Hampton Youth Task Force met yesterday. We meet quarterly, and this is we had representation from the East Hampton and Montauk school districts, as well as East Hampton Village and Town Police Departments, and many of the not-for-profit groups that we work with. We had the retreat there, Phoenix House, Family Service League, Project Most, I Try. The clericus was represented, Rabbi Josh Franklin was there, and basically the entire hour plus was devoted to talking about social media from the school district's perspective. It's the biggest challenge that they face. Bullying is happening 24/7. Posting on social media has gotten some young people in some very dangerous situations, and learned something about apps having hidden vaults where kids can have things that parents don't even see, or how they've, on their screen, they make the app go away, but it's really still there that they can go on. And it's pretty frightening when you hear folks that are dealing with this on a daily basis talk about it. So I just want to remind folks that the school district is having a presentation this week, social media and internet safety, what parents need to know. It's going to be in person. They're doing it in Spanish on Wednesday, March 15th at 6:00 in the high school library. And then on Thursday, March 16th, same time, 6:00, and presented in English. Sergeant Kenny Alversa is doing the presentation. LTV is filming it, and so people can watch it. They don't want to come out and come to the school. They can watch it on, I believe, Jason, it would be, since it's education, it would be channel 22. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be channel 22. I don't know. It's going to be live streamed on our YouTube, and then later, subsequently on our channel.
Beautiful. And what the school district is hoping to do is when it's live streamed, they're going to be sending the link out in text and email so parents can jump on. It's should be an hour. And then it turns out that the retreat is also doing a forum, and that's on Wednesday, March 22nd at 6:00, entitled Digital Boundaries, Partnering with Families to Keep Teens Safe Online. And here they're going to be using folks from their teen leadership program, and also college students that had gone through the teen leadership program. They found that when parents hear it directly from young people, there's
they take notice.
They take notice, and
We learn a lot from our children.
Yeah, and
I certainly
actually,
have.
what was interesting is that Rebecca Morgan Taylor from Project Most recommended, a lot of times when parents go to pick their kids up at Project Most, it could take 10 or 15 minutes for the kids to come from their activity, get their coat, get their bag, and they could use that opportunity for folks to ask parents, pick a week, and you could come when you come to pick up your child, you could have a 10 or 15-minute session on how these social media apps are operating. So it was quite eye-opening. We also talked about mental health services, and Family Service League still has a social worker in the high school 2 days a week, and a new program has started with Phoenix House. They've got a counselor there 1 day a week. So we're giving our kids support, right where they need it, and it, makes it easier on working families that they don't have to then get the kids come home from school and then have to go back to eat, for an appointment. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the East Hampton Housing Authority. We had our monthly meeting last Thursday, and prior to the meeting, we did a tour of the 3 Mile Harbor project, which was terrific. Just to remind everybody, there are 5 two-story residential buildings that are going in. 10 one-bedrooms, 22 bedrooms, and 10 three-bedrooms. This is for folks with average medium income of 30 to 60%, and there's going to be also 8 project-based vouchers. That's a Section 8. And the project is taking steps to advance the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by using electric heat pump heating, hybrid electric hot water heaters, Energy Star certified appliances, and water conservation and energy efficiency strategies. So we walked the property, and then we went into 2 units. the first floor, they were both 2 bedrooms. The first floor unit was ADA compliant. So, they were both units, same floor plan, that the 2 bedroom, they were 1,000 square feet. They had walk-in closets. They had, beautiful tile backsplash and countertops. And it was, obviously the second floor unit had a balcony because that's required by our code. The units back into, it's going to be, like a lawn area. The sunsets there and the views there are incredible. It's really very exciting and really neat. So it was great to be able to take a look and go to and take a look, walk through with the commissioners from the Housing Authority and the folks from Georgia Green Ventures. And they also wanted me to announce, and I believe we got emails about this, that Georgia Green Ventures is having a job fair, and it's tomorrow night, Wednesday, March 15th, from 6 to 8, and they're looking for folks that are going to be working on the 3 Mile Harbor project. They're looking for electricians, laborers, security, a site superintendent, and other folks. And it's the first time they've done something like this out here. So I'm going to take a drive over there tomorrow night and see. Hopefully it's going to be well attended, but it's,
Put that up on our social media. too,
yeah,
for the
I can, I can send that to Joanne. So I think, it's great to see that, they're looking for folks that live here to work here and trying to cut down on, greenhouse gas emissions and having people travel from points west. And, they're offering, obviously competitive pay. So it's nice to see them, as a community partner in all of this. And that's what I have for today.
Thanks, Kathy. David?
I want to let everyone know that the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee will be meeting this week to review the applicants that we have for the RFA 1, which closed a couple weeks ago. Today, I have a resolution on that will be appointing a new chair to the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee. I want to thank Billy Hayjack, who is the East Hampton Village's representative to the committee, for filling that position going forward for 2023. I want to let everyone know that the Montauk Lions Field, we will be installing a new IA system there. We are going to be, the contractor is prepared to do that after the St. Patty's Day Parade, but prior to Little League season, we're taking the allowances. There's an allowance line in there that we're going to be we're going to be sodding instead of laying down seed to make sure the surfaces are ready for the playing season upcoming. I've contacted Buildings and Grounds and also East Hampton Little League to let them know.
David, do you have any kind of time frame on that? That's
April 3rd.
April 3rd.
Yeah, I think it's April 3rd.
And completion?
They say 5 days.
Okay.
I had a meeting with Sylvia and myself. We met with representatives of the Wayne Scott Citizens Advisory Committee's Beach Lane Parking Committee, right, subcommittee.
Yeah.
And going through a lot of the processes of the road reclamation in that area outside the limit of disturbance of the wind farm project. It's a good discussion. We still have questions to answer, but I'll let the board know that we're moving towards some actions to be taken. So it was a fact gathering, listening, and then seeing what can potentially be done either in the interim, getting ready for the season, or post in another phase. And we look forward to reporting more back as we find more information on that.
And Kevin Cobb from the Highway Department.
Kevin Cobb from the Highway Department.
Also there, so he can give us a perspective from what they're asking for.
Correct. The Westlake Comfort Station is moving forward rapidly. Foundation has been poured, it's installed. We put electricity, and I think the water lines are going in. We still look forward to having that dropped and installed. The whole new station, I believe, is going to be on April 20th. So within a month timeframe, we will see a new facility out there. The Nature Preserve Committee met last week. We had a brief discussion on the upcoming changes and discussion of changes to Chapter 182. This has been brought in a long time ago by Zach Cohn to the town board. They're moving ahead on, and they're going to spend the next couple months working on these changes before they present it to the town board. Where the town board is also going to be getting a recommendation from the Nature Preserve Committee to allow for actions to be taken by the Trails Preservation Society and 2 lots in Montauk that will look to connect the North Neck Trail over 2 pieces of property there. We'll get the maps and we'll get the recommendation to the board also then too. It's a nice little area. The North Neck Trail actually connects the Cloden Point Trail over to other trails that go down to through the potato fields and other areas of Montauk. We had a discussion on the turkey hunting season. Primarily, the discussion was we presented Andy Gates and also Kate Council Member Rogers' presentation. Discussion points that were discussed was to be consistent as possible. The lands do belong to everyone. They don't necessarily see a large conflict in based on the methodology of the hunting. And then Memorial Day is a zoo. So they do, so when an individual does say.
So no hunting. Because it's a zoo.
That limitations on that week would be appropriate. So no other actions were taken, but it was just a broad discussion on it then too.
Thank you, Dave.
And I thank you for allowing me my time to discuss that. Let's see here. Lastly, I want to actually just take a moment to actually give my comments and opinions on some of the situations that is happening with some of our taxing district, this particularly being the Northwest Fire District and also with the Water Supply District and how this affects East Hampton Village Ambulance and how our taxpayers. And what I want to make sure that is everyone be known that I have the best interest of the taxpayers and the safety of the residents in mind. Now, while I don't disagree with all the actions that are being discussed between the village and other implementations, I do believe that there should be a greater amount of information provided to the residents of the taxing districts and the residents of the town and the village, because we all work as one. I would want to make sure that moving forward that we have confirmed coverage during the transition period for the taxpayers of the town of East Hampton right now. I will also want to make sure that the long-term cost, which some of them still is to be determined, is not borne solely by the taxpayers of the town, but also equally and distributed within the taxpayers of the village. This specifically since the Northwest Fire District tax increase and Water District are both increasing by 33% this year. Those significant increases have good reasoning by capital improvements, capital investments that they need for new trucks, vehicles, and then also decrease homeowner insurance premiums. I understand that. I want to make sure that, as been the history, that there's mutual aid calls that still will be in continuance there between our school, between all of our districts, and that we work together as one township on there, and that would be for Springs, Amagansett, Montauk, even Bridgehampton if needed, or others. And these are all factors that I am not perfectly aware of, but I am aware of as a longtime life resident. Lastly, I know the Village of East Hampton has also been changing and looking to become a certifying agency for lifeguarding on there, which they have all rights to do so. I do believe that this is a little bit redundant in the efforts of the town and the township. It takes more taxpayer funds for the benefit that was already being met. I do also feel that the Ryan family was not coordinated with, and out of respect for the family, that has led to the town. That has led the town in waterproofing the community over 40 years. I think they should be accounted for, that being the Ryan family. While operation and control is warranted, but at what expense to long-lasting traditional relationships if information is not disseminated effectively and coordinated among the affected parties? That's my liaison report for the day.
Thank you, David. Sylvia?
Yes, the business committee met. The couple of discussions came up. One was Montauk wastewater, possible next step. Chair Paul Monti will have more information when the wastewater committee meets. I assume sometime this week. And is that with you, Peter?
The wastewater committee met on Monday.
Okay, so they met yesterday. So we will have more information on that and from them. We also discussed problems with the Montauk Beach, needing to have sand, the crossovers restored, FIMP update. And so I brought them up to date on some of the information that actually David Lease and the supervisor had provided last week. The chamber said that they would help with any easements that are needed for FIMP. And so please, they're waiting and hopeful that you'll
use their knowledge as well. We briefly discussed inlet dredging, that we had a presentation just last week. Chair Paul Monti wanted to make sure that the company doing the dredging knows there is an underground water line or a pipe that's there. Jeremy is shaking his head in the audience because Jeremy is going to confirm with the contractor that that is indeed knowledge that they have before they start digging. We talked about the update on accessory apartments and affordable housing legislation that Jeremy presented earlier today. So we did decide then to have, limits done by resolution. And the Montauk Chamber is sponsoring a meeting on April the 5th at 1:30 at the Montauk Firehouse with police, code enforcement, fire marshal, our planning department, Jeremy Samuelson, to help with any issues businesses need to be aware of, any kind of outdoor dining permits they might need, state sidewalk dining permits that they might need, and other concerns that they might have as the season starts to open. So, and for anyone else out there, any other business owners, this isn't limited to just Montauk. These fire marshal, code enforcement, police, all employed by the town. Jeremy is, so anyone that has a business that has some questions that day for that particular group of folks, they would also be welcome. There was a lot of discussion on the new hotel tax issue that is at the Suffolk County level. The increase is from 3% to 5.5% for our local hotels. Last Tuesday was the public hearing, and they closed the public hearing so that there are no more public comments that will be accepted. I will say that both the supervisor and Kathy Burke-Gonzalez were able to comment during that day where we were having a very long, I don't think we left the offices until after 7 or so. It was a very long day. But I just want to read the last paragraph of what the supervisor sent. And he said, I urge the legislators to vote against the amendments to the motel and hotel tax law, which will further exacerbate an already unfair and unbalanced situation where the significant revenue raised here in our town is taken by the county and allocated to purposes that do not benefit our local residents or our local businesses. So I appreciate that very much. Yes, thank you both, Kathy and Peter, for doing that.
I understand Leo Daunt, from the president of the chamber, also spoke forcefully and eloquently in front of the
So he ended up being on our call for the business committee and was, our legislator also spoke against it, Bridget Fleming, for the reasons that you guys have all cited, as well as the North Fork representative, Al Krupski. And although some of this money is going to be earmarked for a convention center in Ronkonkoma, the legislator from Ronkonkoma is voting against it because he does not want it there. So there, there's a lot going on in that issue.
So the tax funding is to basically supplement and subsidize that convention center should it not be budget neutral or positive cash flow. And I would just say that if you think you're going to build a convention center that can't be self-supporting, then maybe you shouldn't build a convention center right from the start.
That seems like common sense, but
it does, but apparently that's lost on some.
So the vote for the Suffolk County legislators to take place April 4th. As I mentioned, the public hearing is closed, but just letting folks know.
Can I just add to that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no.
So based on the numbers from last year, and this goes by zip codes, nearly 35% of the taxes collected for this fund came from the town of East Hampton. Montauk specifically was 25% at $3.584 million. And that's all of Suffolk County. And Amagansett at 4%. East Hampton 3%, Sag Harbor, while we don't know if it's East Hampton or South Hampton, another 3%, and these all are totaling another close to $5.5 million, and it's de minimis, less than, anyone come up with a word less than de minimis to what the town receives back from the county as far as historical preservation and specifically infrastructure. I think George Philopoulos said it correctly. We actually don't need more tourism. We need more infrastructure money from the county from this. And the equal disbursement is extremely important because we bear such a load through our resources of our departments. We pay for that through the tax base of the town of East Hampton and taxpayer residents for that and quality of life issues. But for the money to go so far away and not have an exact direct relationship correlation to our quality of life out here, I think is mistaken by them.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll add on even further and say that, we've done long-range planning. We know that through our coastal assessment and resiliency planning that downtown Montauk is at great risk, and over time, that front row of hotels will likely disappear unless we have the ability to transition and adapt to our coastlines changing. Currently, most of the development in downtown Montauk is grandfathered regarding septic flow. It's nearly four times what the county actually allows in terms of flow. So if you have to relocate, that means only 25% of the downtown will be able to be rebuilt on higher ground. So how do you solve that problem? You have to have sewage treatment. And, we've had a recent conversation with parks commissioners, last resort in terms of trying to find a location suitable for sewage treatment plant. There really isn't any. We're open to alternatives, but none has materialized to date. So in terms of being able to actually institute and effectuate an adaptation for sea level rise, we're going to have to deal with sewage treatment. And they're bleeding off this money for other causes. That money should be going back in, reinvesting in the long-term planning and sustainability of that golden goose that lays that egg every year, which they steal from us.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Peter, even including your last sentence, but the idea that the additional tax, it's not the only tax that businesses or people pay. To add an additional tax supposedly for the word hospitality tax that then goes to a vanity project for the group that's collecting it, rather than back into the businesses, particularly post-COVID and with the inflation and staffing issues, and along with all the other issues that you enumerated, is extremely misguided. It's just plain wrong.
It's playing us for a fool out here. I'll say that. I'm sorry, that might be a little too blunt, but I am. How can we stand for that right now when we know the short end of the stick is landing on that from what they're looking to do? That road on Flamingo, I don't know when the last time it's been paved. And we actually the ones that
That's a county road.
It's a county road, and we're the ones that maintain it.
And there's no sidewalk from the train station to the downtown.
Which
And that's a county road.
Yeah.
Where's
And
the
we've been
county money
talking to the
going?
county for
Years.
years. Yes, for years.
Correct. So it's disheartening that it would get this far this quickly right now, and disturbing so much to our hoteliers and our community. But I appreciate Peter and Kathy getting those letters in, because that was just a tight deadline that day.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the individuals that went from the town of East Hampton, the residents and the business owners, to take their time to have their voices expressed, because that is hopefully how you can effectuate change. And if not, at least let your opinion be known. So kudos to them for going to Riverhead for that.
And keep the pressure up.
Absolutely.
Too. Don't stop calling, don't stop showing up.
There was one suggestion.
Sorry, Sylvia.
No. This is a whole very good conversation. This is what this is about, this part of our meetings. There was one suggestion that they urged the legislature, if there was any way the town could do this, to amend and modify this bill now. Instead of letting it get voted on April the 4th, that they should stop it, and we should agree that they stop it, and we should amend it so that we can have it now. I don't know that they'll listen to us, but it might be an opportunity for us to do that for our local businesses.
All right, moving on. Arts Council also met yesterday. We had our meeting at the East Hampton Library as we went over the strategies for our creative networking night, which is on Thursday. Hope everybody that feels like they want to have a creative networking night to listen to 4 artists in the community that are also musicians, a photographer, an artist, and a writer, and talk about their process and how they get to and how they produce the work that they produce. So East Hampton Library, it's a free event, Thursday, March 16th at 6 to 7:30. And then afterwards, those who would like to get a bite to eat can go to Sam's Pizza. And we're going to be at Sam's Pizza when you can continue to discuss and network at Sam's Pizza. Just reminding folks that the Anti-Bias Task Force is also doing at the East Hampton Library Baldwin Room again a movie. We used to do movies in the past, quite a few of them. So we're getting back to that, pre-pandemic days. And this is also a free event. It's the movie The Best of Enemies. It's with Taraji P. Henson and Sam Rockwell. So major stars, and I think the movie was made in 2018, and it is on Sunday, March the 19th at 2:30. Again, it's also free. At the end of the movie, we've got Arthurine Dunn to come from the high school to come and facilitate a discussion or answer questions or just to have a good conversation about kind of a very thought-provoking movie, and also we can have that camaraderie together. Also wanted to say that last week I met with on Zoom. Jeremy was there, Lisa LaCourie, Peter Flinker, and Ray DeBias talking about the Wayne-Scott Hamlet plan. Good. And moving forward with the implementation, we're going to have another meeting at the very beginning of April, and then have a presentation to the town board, probably beginning of May or mid-April, which will talk about, as I said, implementation and the cost of the plan as we start to move forward with that. On March 21st, at the work session, the presentation is going to be by Michael Devner. That report has been completed, and if you don't have a copy, you will be getting a copy soon. So you'll see the work that he did, and as I said, it will be presented at that work session on the 21st, who was hired past December to help the town complete the historic renovations of the site. And it's being known as the Brooks Park Arts and Nature Center. And the town was very fortunate to hire Mr. Devonshire with his knowledge and career in historic preservation of many eras. And I just want to read a little bit. I'll probably do it again when he gets here, but Michael Devonshire was appointed to the Commission of Landmarks Preservation Commission in 2010. He is currently the Director of Conservation at Jan Hurd Pokorny Associates, Inc., which is where we hired him from, where he has worked as an architectural conservator since 1987. He's written numerous papers, publications about restoration technology and strategy, and is a member of the New York State Board of Historic Preservation and the National Trust for Historic Preservation. He is an adjunct professor at Columbia University, Graduate School of Architecture and Planning and Historic Preservation, and at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And he lectures annually at the Preservation Institute in Nantucket. So I think he's the right man for the job, and I look forward to reading and having him reading his report and then having him present it to the town board. And that is my report.
Thank you, Sylvia. Kate?
Yes, I have a short report this week. My committees didn't meet between the last work session and this one, but I do want to inform folks that Southwark Wind, due to marine conditions, has delayed the cable pull. It should begin on March 15th and then go continuously day and night as per their permit conditions through Sunday, March 19th, weather permitting.
Weather permitting and given the seas we have now, and we'll probably have into tomorrow, I'm not sure if they're going to start Wednesday.
They are hopeful. And my other part of my report is just offering congratulations to Samantha Klein, environmental analyst. I believe it's senior in the Natural Resources Department. She applied for and got the opportunity to be a part of the National Review Panel to score the applications that were submitted to the latest FEMA brick grant program. And I think that's quite a compliment to Sam's abilities to be selected for this national review for FEMA. I also agree with Kim Shaw, Director of Natural Resources, and Sam, that this will be informative on what other communities are proposing to do to make their infrastructure more resilient, also informative on grant proposal writing and how reviewers evaluate applications, get some project ideas for East Hampton, and improve Sam's grant writing from participating in this. So not only is a compliment to Sam and her abilities to be selected, but I believe there'll be a good amount of benefits she brings back to the town. And so I, again, would like to congratulate her.
Yeah, that's great. When is that happening, Kate?
It's this week. She's participating this week till through Friday.
Great. Thank you very much, Kate. So last night, ACAC met the Amagansett Advisory Committee. The vast majority of the time was spent discussing the proposed Amagansett Plains Management Plan, otherwise known as 555. They had one individual who's not on the committee had submitted proposed changes to our draft management plan. I did review those. I will circulate those to other board members if you haven't already seen them. I think that for the most part, we had honed in on whatever changes we wanted. The last time we discussed that, they, I think, enumerated various concerns they had. One of which was, I think there was a misunderstanding about our discussions about making improvements at the entrance and the driveway. We did have, I know myself, I brought up the fact that maybe we should consider paving that entrance driveway, given the fact that it also doubles as access for emergency medevac. Somehow that got misconstrued into thinking that we were paving a helipad on the property, and that we were paving the entirety of that whole driveway and parking area, which is not what we discussed and chose to do. So I tried to alleviate their concerns and said that what we had actually come up with was that we would maybe make some additional improvement at the driveway apron as comes off, just to ensure that that drop off from the concrete is stabilized, which could be done with a little bit of asphalt or some other material.
Right, because part of that conversation was the Wounded Warrior. When they use that, we were watching, some of the folks participating like almost launch because of the way it had been so rutted, and there was such a lip.
That's just two things on that. Is that first of all, is that highway has already taken care of it, and second of all, that's not on the property, that's in the right of way still.
Right. And that was brought up by one of the other members. I think it was Tom Field was saying, there's right of way there. Mm-hmm. Then the questions about where the right of way actually ends and begins. There was some concern expressed by some of the members about the number of potential special events that could be held on the property. They would like to see maybe that number reduced. They also expressed, I think, concern about the management plan being pretty open-ended on various ideas, and somehow they also misconstrued that somehow there was going to be an indoor recreational facility built on the property. From our conversation, I think just the mere mention of indoor recreational facility, I don't, you got to be careful, I guess, what you say. People will just jump to the worst possible outcome. There is no plan for any indoor recreational facility on that property. The property was purchased for 3 different uses. One was agriculture, one was open space, and one was recreation. So it's hard to anticipate what the needs and the desires of the community will be 50 years from now. And because of that, I think that was our intent for leaving it open to the allowable uses under CPF. And I still feel that that's important to do. I mean, we could take a look at the number of gatherings on the property, and my recollection, and I don't have it in front of me, was that we were limiting the number during July and August, but would allow
I
on
thought there
shoulder
was a,
seasons.
I,
One per.
there was a total number, but it was only to local charities.
Correct.
So
So there's some question about that, and how is Soldier Ride a local charity? And it's not a local charity, but it did have its origin. Soldier Ride did have its origin here in town from local resident who
And I
started
think
that
we
years
talked
ago.
about Soldier Ride during all of the discussions that we had about purchasing that property, about
Absolutely.
having that property, the resolution, I think even calls it out as,
Right. There was
so it's already,
and that was acknowledged by the chairwoman, who said, that was like grandfathered into the whole conversation. And but again, a non-member had asked the question.
And local folks participate in it, like
They do.
Burke Road
including
during
your
his
elected
when he was
officials.
Boy Scout troop.
I went to Isla Morada down in the Keys with them one
Yeah.
time, and
I went to the American Legion with them.
Yeah, I went to the American Legion breakfast, which is supplied by local
Right.
folks.
yeah.
Yeah, and then we do have local veterans, and it is supporting veterans. I made that point, but the discussion kind of, I guess I could summarize by saying there are members of the committee that have concerns about any activity on that property.
A lot of what
Some I don't think want any activity on the property. They want to just drive by it and see, the beautiful vista that it is. I reminded them that the property was purchased with CPF funds, which that acquisition was made on behalf of the entire town and not
Correct.
a specific location. That it wasn't purchased for the neighbors, if you will, and that we should have a little bit more open mind about it. So I said that I would reiterate the concerns here today and try to alleviate some of the concerns that they have. And that was pretty much the entirety of the CAC meeting, was a discussion about that. There was also, I will bring up a brief discussion at the very beginning about the Amagansett Lighting District. And I would like to put forward funding of the design and engineering study for the Hamlet Center to convert the existing street lighting to historical lampposts, much like what we have right outside here at the town hall, to better improve the lighting, make it more consistent, and make the lighting more consistent with the historic nature of Amagansett. That's going to be a long-term project. It's one that has been discussed. Lighting's been discussed in the past over a number of years. I think when we started talking about the street light upgrade throughout the town, converting to LED lighting, there got to be a lot more attention and interest, and out of that has come a great deal of interest in improving the lighting in the ways that I mentioned. So I think we can move forward with that. I would suggest that we use fund balance for that study. I don't have an estimate as to what we would need financially just yet, but I'd like to move that forward. And so I'll be coming back to the board with
So you're just talking about doing the engineering costs as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think to design and engineer that, and that'll inform us as to what the cost of the actual project would be, and figure out how to do it. Obviously, the Hamlet Center has a great deal buried underground utilities from
Infrastructure.
gas lines, water lines, electric lines, whatever. There also may be an opportunity to get rid of some of the overhead lines in the process. I would think that that would be something we want to try and
Yeah.
include
Build
and
resiliency.
accommodate.
Yeah.
Just as was done many years ago in downtown Montauk. I think it really improves the aesthetic, it improves the resiliency. And if the board is supportive, I will continue to move that forward. And maybe late spring, early summer, we can have that kicked off.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'd like to
Sounds
get
good.
past the replenishment season.
Yep.
Which brings me to my next point of conversation. We're experiencing more erosion today during the nor'easter. We got hit pretty hard this winter season, fall and winter. Even though we didn't have any super major storms, it just seems like the ocean has been a little angrier this year, as David pointed out in a recent liaison report. The crossovers, I know we're looking to re-engineer those, make those more resilient, but 5 or 6 feet has been lost in elevation off that beach, and maybe even more after this storm. We're on schedule to do our annual replenishment, with the idea of having that completed by about May 15th. We're waiting to do the LIDAR flyover. There'll be a resolution to approve that work. That gives us a very real number as to how many cubic yards we need to replenish the beach to get it back to the profile that it needs to be for the summer. We're also in ongoing conversations and work with the state and the federal government on Fire Island to Montauk Point. We'll be seeking easements for that project. We've gotten approval to extend the project to the east, to the transition area of Shadmore, which we talked about today is in our work session. That was welcome news to hear that they're going to expand the project and increase the size of it. This is a federal only cost for the initial project on a 4-year replenishment cycle. This hopefully will give us a little bit more breathing room to figure out our downtown Montauk issues, adaptation, sewer treatment plant, whatnot, all that is tied in together. It'll give us hopefully a little more breathing room, having that additional sand on the beach. We're also seeking easements, as we discussed in the last work session, for the area of sand placement from the inlet dredging project, which is the other Army Corps project that's likely to go forward this fall. Interesting that there's a water line there that we need to make sure they know about.
That's the one.
And that sand will be placed on the western side of the inlet. There's a beach area there at Gosman's. It's very popular. And the sand placement will continue down to in front of the private properties there for approximately 3,000 lineal feet. I will be traveling tomorrow, leaving at 4 a.m. to get to JFK. I'll be traveling to DC to discuss with the federal government officials, professionals, the subject of the airport regulation and administration. Back late tomorrow night. The resolution that we have on today, as a caller pointed out, lists an amount not to exceed $5,000 for that travel. So I guess I'm going to eat well.
Yeah. Have at it.
That's if we approve it.
It's just a not
You
to
approve it.
exceed.
It's a not to exceed. I honestly don't think it needs to be anywhere near that. I've already purchased with my own money for reimbursement the airplane ticket. I think it was around $685.
We have limitations on travel and cost too.
Uber, meals, and parking. So I can't imagine it would even get to 1,000. But there we go. Of course, it has to be with reimbursed based on allowable expenses. Boys and Girls Harbor Rec Path is scheduled to come. I think we'll have a resolution for that. Is it on Thursday, maybe?
Don't know, but it will be coming shortly. Probably
It'll be
early
coming.
April, yeah.
Yeah. So looking forward to that, much like the Buckskill
Multi-use path.
multi-use ADA accessible path and one of our underused parks, 57 acres on 3 Mile Harbor. That will go in. We also have plans to actually move forward with the construction of the pavilion this spring, summer timeframe. That 30 by 40 pavilion be placed next to the existing old basketball courts, which are actually now the parking lot now, fairly close to the road. We think that that'll be well appreciated by residents once they discover that park. There'll also be low nitrogen restroom facilities on that property as well going forward. So that's moving forward. I got an email from Thomas Little, who's a Southampton High School counselor, circulating a job fair poster. They're having a job fair on April 27th. So any local businesses or government entities looking for summer help, they will be circulating and having a job fair at the high school for high school students. So if you're looking for some summer help, you may want to get your information into Thomas Little at Southampton High School, his counselor there, or you can contact my office. I'm going to circulate that to our very own recreation department, the other departments that might be seeking part-time seasonal help. And I think that concludes. Oh, the most important thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm reading my notes off the paper that I was going to read off. There's a proposal, Assembly bill and a Senate bill, as part of the budget process from Governor Kathy Hochul that has caused me great concern regarding housing, whether it be affordable housing or market rate housing. It's a development proposal to increase the new units within a jurisdiction by 3% based on census figures. And I think what's most concerning to me about it is that it basically supplants our zoning laws completely, supersedes our zoning laws, does not require secra. And some of the things that it would actually do the specifics, I asked Jeremy Samuelson, our planning director, and staff to do deep dive on the legislation to just find out what it might mean for us. And, a number of the things were immediately concerning. The secra not being required is very concerning. ADU laws shall not have a maximum square foot size requirement that is less than 1,500 square feet. That ADUs would not have any requirement that would prevent at least 800 square foot for ADU with a 4-foot side and rear yard setback.
My God.
So we don't allow accessory above 600 feet, and based on your lot size we have, so 4-foot side yard. So that's, I don't think, going to help our cause in trying to support affordable housing if suddenly the neighbor's allowed to build 4 feet off the property line with no height restriction, no percentage of GFA of the principal residence. You can't limit the ceiling height above 7 feet. You can't require more than 7 feet of ceiling height in the structure. I'm not even sure that meets building codes.
Yeah, I don't either.
No pathway to the ADU is required to be constructed. No parking lot. No side and rear yard line greater than 4 feet. It's just a number of things. No fee established. I think that applies to building permits. You can't charge for building permit. And this isn't just affordable. It's really for market. And there's a transit-oriented development component whereby within a certain distance of a train station, basically it's almost carte blanche. So When we look at the impacts that this might have on local zoning and community character, it's extremely disturbing. I'm going to be preparing a letter to circulate to the board. I think it may even want to have a little deeper dive at a work session on the 21st ahead of sending that letter. But this is, in my opinion, not the right approach to take. The right approach, as I mentioned to the governor when I met with her, would be to help us by providing funds for infrastructure, provide incentives to meet the goals, and let the individual communities figure out the best way to reach those goals. And that's the best way to do this, I think, rather than try to usurp local control and authority over zoning.
One
Present
size
what your
doesn't
goals
fit
are.
all, right?
Absolutely not. And basically, you will make a monoculture out of, out of our great state of New York. So we'll talk more about this, I think, and prepare a letter. Was kind of taken back and surprised by this this approach. So it's something I think we should voice strongly our dissent over, and try to find ways to encourage a more positive way of trying to reach the goals, which I think the basic goals of the governor, I think I understand and support, but the methodology in trying to get there is not going to be very cooperative, I don't think. So that's it for my report. And I thank you, Jeremy and staff, for doing the deep dive on that legislation with very little time really to turn it around.
I'd like to offer Resolution 2023-386, appoint lifeguards to preseason training for 2023, retroactive to March 12, 2023. Theodore Calabrese, Ethan Mitchell, and Frank Skibo.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
387 is approve revised 2023 Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee membership for calendar years 2023. The town board accepts the resignation of Laura Tooman from the committee. Also moves forward the chairperson for the committee, Bill Hayjack, and also adds on Jamie LaDuke as a new member for 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's carried.
388 is authorized payment to McCloskey Mechanical for 300 Panico Place, unit number 105, for an outstanding 2023 work invoice. Work was done in 2022 in the amount of $1,894.50.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's carried.
389 is authorized payment for Outback portable toilets for invoices for 2022 in the amount of $2,120.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's carried.
390 is amendment to Resolution 2022-1408, authorize the CPF acquisition. This is amendment to the Hallbreck, where after executing, whereas post the contract execution, the purported owner, Caroline Hallbreck, requested the town amend the contract of sale from Caroline Hallbreck to her newly formed CHHF LLC. There's no changes to the financial impact of the sale.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carried.
Resolution 391, I'd like to table.
Second.
Withdraw.
You want me,
Yeah, well,
We probably
we can withdraw and we'll put it
you
back
want to
in.
withdraw it?
Yeah, I think that's
Do you have a
easier.
second?
Second.
All in
Yes, we have to
favor?
change it.
Aye.
That's carried.
I have resolution 392. This is to authorize travel. Whereas there is a need for members of the East Hampton Town Board to travel to Washington DC, mainly the supervisor, to meet with federal government officials and professionals on the subject of airport regulation administration. Be it resolved that Town Supervisor Peter Van Scoyac is authorized to travel to Washington DC on March 15th. Expenses and reimbursement to be in accordance with the adopted town travel policy and paid for from the appropriate budget account in the amount not to exceed $5,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's carried again. I don't think it's going to come anywhere close to 5, but
You have to leave a little wiggle room.
Yeah, that's a lot of wiggle room. Resolution 393 is to appoint Courtney Garneau to the 2023 CARP Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. Resolution 394 is to engage outside counsel in the matter of Orsted Eversource South Fork Wind Application 2023. And it's resolved that Eli Elabut from the law office of Eli Elabut be engaged to represent the town in these matters, not to exceed $25,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. 395 is to reimburse Hope DeLauder for court filing fees in the amount of $66.94.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. 396 is to authorize services in Rocky Smith, not to exceed the amount of $1,500 for annual HUD report.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. Any other matter to bring before the board? Okay.
I move that we go into executive session for leases, contracts, personnel, CPF, and advice of counsel.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. How about we get back together at 2:30?
Sounds good.
For folks?
Yep.
Okay, we'll see you then. I'll send a Zoom. Stay safe, be well, everyone.